DCX Sonic Issue 5. It starts by reminding us of stuff we already know. For some arbitrary reason, the world's being torn apart by the power of the Ragnarok, but only the tiny part of the world right next to it is. Since when does the mere presence of an emerald do that? If it's really Darkseid doing it, since when could an emerald be made to do that just by holding it? It'd be stupid writing to have it so that anyone could do anything with an emerald, because that opened up the question, why doesn't every hero with an emerald instantly use it to beat the bad guy of the story? How would Darkseid know he could tear up a world with the emerald? Who told him what exact powers it had? If he thought it could do anything, he'd have already won by using it to kill the heroes from a distance. How can he tear up the world outside of the Ragnarok, but can't escape the Ragnarok? I assume he can't, because otherwise him not going after the heroes makes no sense. Superman says their plan is to go to the bad guys and fight them. That's hardly a plan. It's nice that Diana's holding Amy with the two of them smiling, though it does treat her in a juvenile way by having her held so high like she's a little kid. In such a boring arc, I can't get the motivation to compliment the story on Sonic's dialogue. Of course he's in character, but that's like complimenting the artist for remembering to make the grass be green. For the same reason, I usually don't compliment the stories on being cool, because they're supposed to be. It's like camera controls, you only notice it when it goes wrong. I wish they'd at least have all of their boring chit-chatting about recent events while they're flying towards the fortress. Why are they letting the world get slowly torn apart just so they can stay still and recap to us? There are multiple boring pages of worthless predictable dialogue no one should like, instead of at least fighting. You know, the whole reason the people who like this read it? In one of them, it's nice of Diana to say that Amy's an honorary Amazon and they're with her in spirit wherever, even though she didn't get raised by them training with them for her whole life, so you'd think they wouldn't see her as one of them just because she can swing a hammer, which anyone could do. I don't find it appealing that Amy's being treated so nicely by the writer after all of the times she made Sonic uncomfortable. Tails didn't have to explain how they were going to get to Darkseid. He could have just done it. I hate the blatant padding that I have to see Darkseid talk to himself boringly for a bunch of panels before the heroes warp to him. Why should I give a shit that it's trying to make a dramatic atmosphere if we all know it's not going to end with them winning, because him winning would destroy the world in a series like this? Yes, he literally says he's going to lay waste to the world, even though he's conquered others, so I think he'd want to benefit from conquering it, not waste perfectly good resources by destroying it for no reason. He somehow expects me to believe he spent countless ages here instead of just a few weeks. He thinks he can bend to his will this crazy new dimension he's inexplicably in when no one made the decision to send him to another dimension, not even himself. I guess there's too much chaos energy in this dimension, so he can control everything native to here with the emerald. And he can only use the emerald for that purpose, because otherwise he'd just make a wish that he beat the heroes and they'd instantly be defeated. Why don't they just call this dimension the Special Zone and say they got sent here because it collected 50 rings? Then it'd make sense and fit into Sonic. There's an 8-bit Sonic game where collecting 50 rings immediately teleports you to the special stages. The games are never consistent on what sends you there, so obviously it's canon that changes all the time, so it could change to that. And the rest of the story is just a typical, averagely cool visuals of the characters fighting the objects that Darkseid sends at them. While they're not doing anything new, and not saying anything worth talking about. With a few exceptions. He's sending a dirt golem at them, but isn't that basically what AOSDH Robotnik did with the Life Emerald? There's something with an energy output on par with the emeralds that isn't any of the emeralds. And Tails questions this and gets given the pathetic hand wave that this place doesn't make any sense anymore because of Darkseid using the emerald just to telekinetically control stuff here. Which wouldn't make it stop making sense in most ways. Why doesn't Tails assume the large energy output is from a huge amount of rings? Or the fact that he's in the special zone, so there would be nothing but huge chaos energy output everywhere? Why doesn't Silver telekinetically grab the head of Darkseid and be productive instead of just grabbing his hand, but not the hand with the emeralds for no reason? Silver would instantly win this fight. Sonic gets an emerald and says he's too far away from the fight now, and the writer forces them to come to the conclusion for no reason that trying to use chaos control here would inexplicably make things worse. Flash says that they could just run over there without a solid ground because he thinks physics are a bad joke in here, and I'm not complimenting this as creative either. I've already seen this in Archie Sonic. Eventually, Sonic gets to go super, and there's no impact shown in the fighting, which has been the case the entire issue anyway. Why should I care about seeing light hit Darkseid? That doesn't look painful. How is this awesome? I'm used to seeing Super Sonic. The story keeps being predictable and boring, and it says Sonic also supercharged the hero's device when he went super. Since Sonic is just doing the same attacks he always does as Super Sonic anyway, even though it would have been redundant, it still would have been nice aesthetically if Superman went super too. Just for the sake of the fact that it's a DC crossover, not just a Sonic story. It's good that the 8th Emerald of Sonic the Fighters got referenced again. Flash says the Speed Force is one of the 7 fundamental forces of the universe, so it should be able to work as a comparable energy source to Chaos Energy. At first it seems weird because the Speed Force isn't coming from a Chaos Emerald, but consider what the power of an emerald is, and what the power in superheroes is. It's just magic. It's pointing out that the power in the emeralds and Sonic characters is just magic by dictionary definition because it cheats physics. So of course Flash's power would generate the same energy. This makes it a little fun when I know that game purists argued chaos energy isn't magic because they don't want to admit that since that word is associated with the West, and insist that it's chi even though that's just magic by definition. So this is creative. Cyborg makes a force field and Flash runs on top of Tails' spinning tails to build up a charge. And everyone else is just buying them time in a bunch of fight panels involving nothing but people with plot armor that doesn't show any impact to even give us catharsis and doesn't accomplish anything with any individual hit. So it's just kind of boring filler. Just the kind that should have been there instead of all of that talking earlier. I was thinking it went without saying, but this is just the final fight with Sigma and Worlds Unite all over again. I just want to see him get smacked around like a Looney Tunes character. Darkspine Sonic had a way more satisfying looking fight because he punched the person. Darkseid tries to bring down the fabric of reality on them, and somehow he thinks he'll survive this, and we aren't told he would, so he looks like a massive idiot. Which I don't think is supposed to be his character. Even if he was actually a god his whole life. I don't see how anything could survive the dimension it's in being deleted. Just because he's embarrassed by getting hit a bunch of times when he's invincible anyway. That's somehow enough for him to go crazy. Flash throws a charged up gadget and there's some light. I think the idea is Darkseid got killed or warped to another dimension. And then everybody gets sent back home. This feels anticlimactic because I didn't see a single satisfying, painful looking impact against Darkseid. He never even said ow once. So I just feel like all he went through was seeing a bunch of flashes of light get sent to him. So Flash used Chaos Control to warp everyone to a separate location from each other and warp the Ragnarok to make it stop doing damage. It's boring to see the reaction of every character being sent home. Tails says that by putting so much power in the dimensional engine, they also sent reality back in time to before the invasion, undoing the Master Emeralds from being destroyed and fixing any attacked locations. Even though it would be more satisfying to see the heroes fixing the attacked locations. Time and space is supposed to be part of the same fabric, and 06 had time travel with the Emeralds, so that makes sense. No one's explaining that Darkseid was trapped in another dimension so that he couldn't just make the arc happen again now that they're back in time. I just have to assume that. Sonic calls Tails and Cyborg heroes, And Amy spends a while getting to the point that she's gonna miss the new friends she made, while having a terrible pose. So much boring dialogue here. The Ragnarok lost its anchor point in space-time, so Darkseid's not gonna be bothering anyone anytime soon. Sonic's smug reaction has him call Darkseid just a hater like he's the childish Lost World bully Sonic. Amy whines about none of this fazing him, when I'd expect Amy to appreciate him for being himself. Aside from that last word, he's acting how he always did. He always was rude to his enemies and was unfazed by the end of an adventure. Amy's acting like everything she loved about Sonic in the first place is suddenly annoying to her. It's like she's like Sally. I'm glad he gets to explain his good mood then. At least the characters didn't forget the crossover happened, because it's new for them to remember it this time. Sonic still makes it clear what the downside is to that because he's gonna miss Flash. And Amy also made it clear she's gonna miss people because of this. So there's a reason the characters always get made to forget crossovers. But it is a cliche. The story ends with him wishing he could race Flash again, and a whole page of Lex Luthor making an argument that he should partner up with Eggman after the heroes left the boundaries between their worlds open. Which was sloppy considering all of the crazy supervillains this leaves Mobius vulnerable to coming there. There's no way Flash would keep the boundary open then. Sally didn't make this mistake, she just threatened to scare Enchantress. I thought this was supposed to be the last issue of the DC crossover forever. What a stupid decision to wait until it ends to have the main villain of Sonic partner up with Lex Luthor. And all he ever did the whole crossover was serve as a free taxi to the real villain, never being used as an antagonistic force. So the writer should have replaced him with the Babylon Rogues, who could have given the heroes a ride in their blimp. At least Worlds Collide and Unite took advantage of both Eggman and the other main villain. This boring issue by Ian Flynn went exactly like anyone would expect it to in general, by having the heroes fight Darkseid in an unsatisfying way, and everything bad in the crossover get undone, with no pleasant gutsy surprises that someone overly optimistic would predict. And the problem is that most of the story was worthless dialogue and no plot progression, so it was boring to force myself through. The only slightly impressive standout thing about it is the 8th Emerald reference. Oh yeah, and the creative way that they supercharged the dimensional engine. Why couldn't the fight with Darkseid have shown the impact of every hit, and have every hit be a physical one and had him be in pain?